As an urban planner, I'm a lover of cities, especially of public spaces. So that's streets, parks, plazas, public transport, all the kind of places that are open to everyone and anyone. I think for me, as a resident or as a tourist, they're really important spaces because I think that's where you form your opinion of a place, whether you think it's interesting or cool, whether it's safe and welcoming. But I guess the process of making public spaces isn't that interesting sometimes. It takes a really long time, like 20 years from an idea to actually landing on the floor. There's funding and there's approvals, there's heaps of political processes within that. And then when you actually build anything, there's also lots of rules about what you can and can't do in a space. This is a sign that I saw when I was living in Toronto in a park, and it says, "Please walk on the grass." And I remember taking this photo because it was funny. It was kind of ridiculous that such an obvious, simple action had to be put on a sign that somebody has to tell us that it's okay to sort of do that. And so I also going to talk through a couple of different rules that I think are shaping cities, as well as ones I think we could break. For me, I see a lot of cities being designed towards cars. I think that's a rule that we should be breaking, and that we should be designing cities for people. So in 2005, a group in San Francisco called Rebarb discovered that their downtown was 70% dedicated to cars. So that's just street pavement and car parking spaces. So it's only 30% for people. They also started to dig down into their parking rules, and what they found out was that you didn't actually technically have to put a vehicle there. A lot of the rules were more about the time and the payment of the parking spaces. So you could put in whatever you wanted. And so they did. They put a park in a parking space, complete with some turf, a seat and a tree. And when the meter ran out in 2 hours, they picked it up and they moved the park. This simple, fun idea became an international day that happens every September, Good Parking Day. And with the help of the internet, it kind of exploded worldwide. This happens in probably 100 cities or so now. And it happens in Australia, and Brisbane was the first city that it happened in. So it happened in 2007 with a cafe owner in Paddington. Myself and Morgan then got together and we said, "Oh, let's make some more." And we had a very humble target of doing 5, and it kind of exploded and came to about 50 of them. We ran it for about 5 years. And for me, it came from an urban design kind of interest, but there was lots of people involved, community groups, artists, design firms, just lots of awesome people. This is one of my favorites that happened in the Valley in 2008. It's a little park, a beach with some real sand. This is by Tonic Architecture in 2008. Every year they're just so amazingly creative. I've seen chickens and balloons. We've had ping pong tables and custom furniture. There was even a pool and a skip bin in 2011. And every year, this is New James Street, and every year it adds this instant, amazing sort of fun spontaneity on the streets. And just for this one day, people think about their streets differently. And this also happened without any Brisbane City Council approval at all, though I think a lot of people mistakenly thought it was that. It happens now in other Australian cities. Adelaide is the biggest city, creates about 50 a year, and they've got their local city council to close down streets for them as well. I guess in Brisbane, one of the biggest wins was that this is a landscape architecture firm in Baxter Street in the Valley. They participated for over 5 years, and they ended up converting one of their private car spaces into seating spaces for their staff. So this idea that temporary things can lead to more permanent change is sort of one of the greatest things I really enjoyed out of it. The next rule is about freeways, because when we design for cars, we also design freeways, and when we design freeways, we get really ugly underneath spaces of them that you're kind of told that you shouldn't really go near, and they're unsafe and ugly. But we broke that rule in 2010. This is a pop-up dinner that I did with a couple of different non-profits in the Brooklyn to Queens Expressway. It was about getting people to reimagine what that space could be. We kind of had no money. We threw some tables together out of recycled pallets, and it was a potluck style dinner, so people just brought their food to share. Again, it was getting people to rethink what this space could be. It led on to some more planning proposals around removing that car park and making it into parkland. Closer to home, one of my pet peeves has been the Riverside Expressway, and in 2012 helped form a non-profit called the UR BNE Collective, who advocates for urban spaces. Every year we also put on a festival. This is the 214 Festival, done in partnership with some state government-owned land in that area. Again, it was about bringing people into this space. It's actually up for redevelopment to expand that whole precinct, including the casino and bridges and all that kind of thing you might have seen in the media. Like the dinner, we activated underneath this expressway with not much money in budget. This was a temporary skating and parkour area that we did for the Sunday. Over a weekend, there was also food and music, bringing people down. So when you are designing for cars, you tend to build more streets than ever shut them down. And politicians and traffic engineers tend to freak out about it. But you can close down streets, and we did that in 2013. This is Albert Street between Mary and Margaret. So this is the 2013 UR BNE Collective Festival in partnership with Brisbane City Council, who were at the time doing their city centre master plan. All we really did was put some umbrellas, some AstroTurf and some seats there, and people kind of just came and populated it over the lunch times. As part of this process, they were testing 12 different sites across the city. This was one of the sites, and by showing that it could actually work and what you could do in it, it's become the first priority project out of that plan, and I think they're about to announce it pretty soon that they're making it into a permanent shared space. After that event, we also noticed that it got closed down for other things, and so it started to show that while it was really hard to get the first one through, people can start to see change, they use space differently, and they can see that it's possible, and I think that's one of the most powerful things. So the last rule is really that cities tend to be shaped by really big projects, really big money, really long time frames, but what this projects and other projects are showing is that there's a whole movement that, if you look it up, it's sometimes called tactical urbanism, that is being seen in heaps of different cities. It's about using temporary works and community-driven initiatives to actually make permanent change. So the principles behind it are really around design prototyping, doing things faster, making it lighter and cheaper, and influencing communities about what could happen in spaces. So what happened, and I'll just go through some examples of that. What happened in San Francisco was the original parking day was hugely successful, so much so that their city council now runs a program called Parklets, so it's them paying for seating to be put into car parking spaces. Again, it's been something that's been duplicated in other cities as well. My favourite and biggest example is probably in New York. So if you're familiar with Times Square and kind of laneways sort of further south of that, all they sort of did was start these instant public spaces with just paint, some movable chairs, and some plants, and that was it. What it did do was it helped build lots of community interest in it. They could test out their ideas. They then allowed themselves some time to get that extra investment and that political buy-in, and so over the years they've been building it up ever since. The Department of Transport now runs a program where communities can apply for lane closures and new plazas, and that's pretty astounding when you think those sort of departments are set up to build roads, not ever close them down. It's hugely successful. I think everybody wants to copy this program. Closer to home, this is North Shore Hamilton, and my parking day collaborator, Amy Saunders, went on to design and facilitate a festival there. It also was around the start, helped launch the Eat Street markets, and if any of you guys have been there, it's like super popular on a Friday and Saturday night. This whole area is still state government-owned land, so it's a development site. It's all temporary. I think they got their containers for like $1 and a really great deal. And it really wouldn't surprise me that in a couple of years, when that development site comes up to be built, I will bet some money that a food market's going in there, because people can see that it works, and people will also fight for things that they love as well. So that's the power of these temporary projects. So while cities are full of rules, I think it's a mistake to think that local councils and governments are the only ones making those rules. Hopefully all these projects have showed that it's actually community members who are shaping the rules. And so I also invite you to think about some spaces near where you work or on your street, and the little things that could be done in those spaces to improve them. Because while the city makes lots of rules, it's up to us to change them. So when the city tells you to walk on the grass, I say, why not dance on it? Why not skip on it? Please make it whatever you want, because it's your city to shape. Thank you.